"Garrett!" shouts a panicked, sweating mechanic returning from the field. "What now?" he responds. "Is another sand track broken?" "Better not be that," Lucy adds. "I've got enough shit to fix." "No, not that," he responds. "A team out scavenging found a wrecked sand ship buried in a dune." The three of them stop in front of the mechanic's shop, and the mechanic wipes sweat from his brow with his gritty sleeve and repeats himself about the sand ship. Garrett's hesitant to believe his optimism, especially when he claims the sand ship is salvageable. But within half an hour, the three of them arrive at the location of the sand ship, buried deep in a dune. The massive hulk of a ship is almost entirely buried in the dune. Only a fraction of its side is visible under the sand, and it bears massive punctures. Most of the brownish paint has been weathered off, but enough of the side remains for the ship to have an ID. The name is painted in white, and in an alphabet no one present can read. So, the explorer who found it presses for it to be named after him for finding it. But Lucy and Garrett shut down his idea with a glance, and proceed up the dune and into the battered husk. Each step inside is greeted with the shrill twisting noise of the metal plates lining the walkway. The structure underneath them is either weak or gone, and Lucy takes careful steps ahead of Garrett. As they dredge further in, the roof releases rushes of sand, and the particles weaken the scant sunlight piercing into the structure through the holes in the shell. Eventually, the two of them arrive at a door, broken into its frame, blocking their access to any further depths. Garrett hollers out one of the holes, and soon enough one of the scavengers arrives with a couple crowbars and a good attitude about prying doors. With two crowbars firmly gripped in between the metal frame and the heavy metal door, Garrett and the scavenger grunt and strain until it gives way. It pries open only enough for a hesitant Lucy to fit through. Inside the room, Lucy pulls a rare resource from her satchel, a flare. She lights the flare and guides herself around the room, discovering damaged bulkheads and arrays of valves covered in sand. Garrett shouts about if there is a way through, and Lucy scrounges the room for an exit. She finds a couple possible exits, but they're filling with sand from the dune and can't be dug out. Lucy returns to Garrett with the news, and at first he's annoyed. Then Lucy mentions the valves, and he and the scavenger brighten up. "How many valves?" presses the scavenger. 12, maybe 16, she estimates. "Fuck," Garrett mumbles off. "This is complicated then. That's probably the bridge, and if we leave this sand ship like this, someone else will probably take it over. They might even get it running." Garrett walks out from the husk and surveys the area. He stabs a rod down at several spots surrounding the sand ship to find the depths of the sand. He notes in his notebook every time he hits something solid. And when he returns to the crew waiting below, all gathered around the sand track, he combs his hand through his hair and says, "Well, I guess we're moving to town." Over the next several days, the townspeople pack up their belongings and their buildings, all made of metal sheets, onto the back of sand tracks. The sand tracks run trips back and forward to the sand ship all day long. Garrett knows this could be a race against the clock, and risks using all three of the sand tracks to haul the goods, against Lucy's practical concerns about the fuel usage and the risk of breakdown. The first few trips are prioritized to haul water from the town to the new site. And before the wells dry, the first sand track breaks down. About half the town is moved before the second sand track breaks down, and by the time the third and last one breaks down, all that's left that can be moved by foot. As the last broken sand track is pulled into the makeshift repair shop below the sand ship, Lucy complains to Garrett about how right she was. "This big hunk of metal's worth the risk," Garrett justifies. "Besides, we didn't lose anything other than fuel and some parts." "Parts we can't replace," Lucy complains. "Think of it as a challenge for you mechanics to get creative," Garrett jokes optimistically. Lucy shrugs him off and rolls herself underneath the sand track, trying to figure out what just broke. She grunts from underneath, and a thunderous shudder of metal echoes out into the quiet night air when she removes the under panel of the soundtrack. Moments later, she thrusts her hand out from under the frame to show Garrett, her hand covered in oil and grit. "Broke the fucking engine bearing," she shouts out. She hammers a wrench against the engine, then hollers out, "Big crack in the engine mount too. Fuck." Lucy's hammering stops, and she rolls up from under the soundtrack, onto her back. She's got splotches of black oil all over her tattered jumpsuit. Garrett stays silent, and Lucy storms out of the shop. He scoffs at her attitude, and only thinks about how he can avoid her wrath in the morning. He then pulls out a cigarette he'd been saving, a rare find from salvage, and lights it with the sparks from 2 crossed wires in the mechanic shop. He inhales, coughing the white smoke into the flickering lights of the workshop. After a few more puffs and a few more coughs, he snuffs the cigarette out on the hood of the soundtrack and flicks it to the dirt. "If this works out, we're going to be all right. Better than all right," he shares to the night air.